Hi guys, welcome back. Today let's look into 25 famous architects and their notable works. So here's the first one. Walter Gropius. He says good architecture should be a projection of life itself, and that implies an intimate knowledge of biological, social, technical and artistic problems. One of his notable work is Gropius House, Massachusetts and Figs Factory, Germany. Next architect is Zaha Hadid. She says, I don't think that architecture is only about shelter. It should be able to excite you, to calm you, to make you think. Her notable projects are: the first one is the Bridge Pavilion, Spain. The next project is Magzi Museum, Museum of 21st Century Art. Next is the Hyder Aliyev Center. Moving on to the next architect, that is Thomaine. He says architecture is a result of a process of asking questions and testing them and reintegrating and changing in a repetitive way. One of his notable work is Diamond Ranch High School, California and the University of Toronto, Graduate House, Toronto. Moving on to the next architect, that is Tadawando. He says the speed of change make you wonder what will become of architecture. His notable work is the Church of Light, Japan, and another work is Shanghai's Polygrand Theatre, China. The next architect is Shigeru Ban. He says, I'm not inventing anything new, I'm just using existing material differently. His notable works are Center Pomme Saint-Didier, Metz, France. Another work is Cardboard Cathedral, New Zealand. Moving on to the next architect, that is Santiago Calatrava. He says, I am always searching for more light and space. Two of his notable works are Alamelo Bridge, Spain, and the next work is Auditorio de Tenerife, Spain. Moving on to the next architect, that is Robert Venturi. He says less is more. His notable works are Jordan Wu Hall, New York and Sainsbury Wing, UK. Moving on to the next architect, that is Robert Stern. He says to be an architect is to possess an individual voice speaking a generally understood language of form. His notable works are 15 Central Park West, New York and Comcast Tower, Pennsylvania. Moving on to the next architect, that is Rem Koolhaas. He says a building has at least two lives, the one imagined by its maker and the life it lives afterward, and they are never the same. His notable works are McCormick Tribune Campus Center, Chicago and CCTV Headquarters, China. Moving on to the next architect, Renzo Piano. He says architects have to dream. We have to search for our Atlantis, to be explorers, adventurous and yet to build responsibly and well. His notable works are Centre Georges Pompidou, Paris and Le Shard, London. Moving on to the next architect, Richard Mayer. He says, an important work of architecture will create polymus. His notable works are Barcelona Museum of Contemporary Art, Spain and the JEE Center, Los Angeles. Moving on to the next architect, that is Louis Kahn. He says architecture is the reaching out for the truth. His notable works are Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, India, Jatiyo Sangsad Bhavan, Bangladesh. Moving on to the next architect, that is Le Corbusier. He says to create architecture is to put in order. What to put in order? Function and objects. His notable works are Villa Savoy and Esprit Nouveau Pavilion, Paris. Moving on to the next architect, that is Mies van Rio. He says less is more. His notable works are Fransworth House, Palno and Seagram Building, New York. Moving on to the next architect, that is Norman Foster, and he says, as an architect you design for the present with an awareness of the past for a future which is essentially unknown. His notable works are 30 St. Mary Ace London and Willis Faber and Dumas headquarter Ipswich. Moving on to the next architect, that is Oscar Niemeyer. He says form follows beauty. His remarkable works are Contemporary Art Museum Brazil and Natal City Park Brazil. Moving on to the next architect, that is Charles Correa. He says market forces do not make cities, they destroy them. His notable works are Jawahar Kala Kendra India and Bharat Bhavan India. The next architect is Daniel Libeskind. He says to provide meaningful architecture is not to parody history but to articulate it. His remarkable works are Jewish Museum Berlin and Imperial War Museum England. The next architect is Eero Saarinen. He says function influence but does not dictate form. His notable works are Gateway Arch Missouri and TWA Terminal New York. Next architect is Frank Lloyd Wright. The mother art is architecture. Without an architecture of our own, we have no soul of our own civilization. His notable works are Falling Water, Pennsylvania and Guggenheim Museum, New York. Moving on to the next architect, that is Frank Gehry. He says, I don't want to do architecture that's dry and dull. Notable works are the Walt Disney Concert Hall, California and Marquis de Risle Vineyard Hotel, Spain. Next architect is Jean Nouvel. He says each new situation requires a new architecture. His notable works are Louvre, Abu Dhabi, UAE, Akbar Tower, Spain. Moving on to the next architect, that is I.M. Pai. He says a lasting architecture has to have roots. His notable works are Museum of Islamic Art Doha and Louvre Pyramid, Paris. The next architect is Kenzo Tange. He says designs of purely arbitrary nature cannot be expected to last long. His notable works are Gateway Arch, Missouri and Tokyo Olympic Arenas, Japan. Moving on to the next architect, that is Antoni Gaudí. He says there are no straight lines or sharp corners in nature, therefore buildings cannot have straight lines or sharp corners. His notable works are Casa Batlló, Spain and Sagrada Familia, Spain. So that's all for today. Thank you. Bye.